Y'all, it's your boy Easy, and on today's episode of Easy Opens, we're going to be taking a look at the Neca Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2012 Shredder. This version of Shredder first appeared in Season 1, Episode 2, Rise of the Turtles Part 2, on September 29th of 2012. Real name is Oroku Saki. He was born April 6, 1962, a Japanese master of martial arts, leader of the Foot Clan, arch nemesis of the TMNT, and their master Splinter. All right, so the box art is awesome as per usual with Neca, but we're not here to talk about that, so let's go ahead and get this figure free from its plastic prison and see what we think about the Shredder. All right, so fresh out the box, I'm kind of a little disappointed, going to be honest with you, because I had a fear this might happen. Yeah, almost immediately taking him out and messing around with him for a minute, I already broke him. So I broke off the top left spike on his right shin guard, and thankfully it was a clean break, so I can kind of like put it back in, and I could probably glue it, but still that's kind of irritating. You know, I get that with a design like this you're probably going to have some breakage, but I just didn't think it would happen that soon, and I'm generally pretty careful with my figures, so it's a little irritating and not really a good first impression. But moving on, this figure looks really good. I do like the design and the look of the figure, and I think Neca did a great job here. I mean, this is not my favorite version of Shredder's outfit. It looks cool, don't get me wrong, I like it. It's exaggerated a lot, and almost to a point that it's like too much, especially in the shin guard area. I get that this series had like a thing with like wide feet and big legs, I guess is what you'd call it, and it's aesthetically pleasing. Like, it looks cool and it looks balanced and everything. It looks fine. It's just that it's a little big, and I don't know, it just seems a little too much and cumbersome, I guess. Like, it almost seems like it shouldn't work. Now I get that this is exactly how he looked in the show, but like at the same time it's a little much. Like, my feelings are mostly positive about this figure. It's just that I think I wanted to like it a little bit more than what I do. But then again, like I just said, you know, I had a break immediately, so that's already got me a little sour on it. But as far as like the detail and sculpt and everything that's here is awesome. It's got like a shininess to the armor, which is really cool. And there's some sculpted on detail in the chest armor and breaks it up a bit. And it's not too shiny, but it's enough that it catches the light, and that's really cool, and I like that aspect of it. The spikes look great. The rest of the suit looks really cool, but there's just something about it. I guess I'm nervous about breaking this figure again, that I'm kind of like being very gentle with it, and I kind of hate that, because it kind of, just as I was getting over my PTSD of like messing around with the Revoltech version of the Nick Turtles that we've got ages ago, the NECA ones were like kind of like sending me to like therapy to overcome some of that trauma from those figures. Now this one's kind of got me like backtracking a little bit, where I'm like, oh, I don't know. But I mean, overall aesthetically, the look, he looks cool. Like, I dig the look. It's a little over exaggerated for my taste, but at the same time, I still really like it. He's got a decent amount of heft to him, which I like that a lot. I don't know. There's just something about how big the gauntlets are too, that like, it just seems overdone. And I get that that's how he looked in the show and everything, but maybe I'll feel different about him once I get the other spikes in his gauntlet. Maybe that'll like do something to balance it out for me. But as far as like looks, like if I just put him on a shelf, he looks awesome. So it's probably something with the messing around and posing that I'm like nervous about getting into this review, but we kind of have to, but because that's what y'all are here for. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and get into that. Shredder comes with 2 interchangeable heads, 6 interchangeable hands, 6 optional blade extensions, and Krang. So according to Turtlepedia, this version of Shredder stands around 6'5", and I couldn't find how much he weighs, but this figure stands from the bottom of his foot to the top of his helmet. The spike part of his helmet is 7.5 inches tall and weighs around 6 ounces. Now let's see how he measures up to some other figures you might have in your collection. Here he is with Storm Collectibles Mortal Kombat Baraka and Jada Toys Mega Man Cutman. Here he is with Hasbro's G.I. Joe Classified Cobra Commander and Jada Toys Street Fighter Vega. Here he is with Hasbro's Marvel Legends Wolverine and Hasbro's Fortnite Shadow Meowscles. Here he is with Figma's Link and SH Figuarts Kamen Rider Thouser. Here he is with Mattel's DC Universe Classics Killer Moth and McFarlane's Mortal Kombat Shao Kahn. Here he is with NECA's Sesame Street Count Von Count and Super 7's Donatello. Here he is with NECA's Mirage Comics Karai as the Shredder and Hasbro's Power Rangers Lightning Collection Morphed Shredder. Here he is with NECA's 1990 TMNT Movie Shredder and NECA's Mirage Comics 4-pack Shredder. Here he is with the Batman TMNT crossover Shredder and the NECA Archie Adventures comic Shredder. Here he is with NECA's 1987 animated series Shredder 1.0 and 2.0. Here he is with NECA's knockoff colored bandana Mirage Comics Leonardo and NECA's 1987 animated series Michelangelo. Here he is with NECA's Return to New York 4-pack Raphael and the TMNT Batman crossover Donatello. Here he is with the NECA Mirage Comics 4-pack Foot Soldier and the NECA 1987 animated series Foot Soldier. Here he is with the NECA 1987 animated series Baxter Stockman the Fly and Krang. And here he is with Marvel Select Hulk and the DC Direct Arkham Asylum Killer Croc. I'm a pretty big Shredder fan. I think that his general design is sleek and classy. There's just a sort of elegance to it. And the character overall is one of the best villains in fiction. Again, in my opinion. Maybe it's just that I grew up having him as the big bad for the Turtles in most of their incarnations, and it created a sort of prestige that, coupled with nostalgia, might inflate my own emphasis on his superiority in design and character. But regardless, unlike the Turtles, who all took from their previous incarnations to create a different, broader take on the characters for this series, this one ditched the buffoonery of the 87 animated series and solely kept the dark and brooding evil elements of some of the more darker, brooding, evil-toned versions of the character. I enjoyed this take on Shredder. The design worked for the show, and it was menacing and imposing as intended. But the hyper, super deformed, exaggerated design is just off-putting for me as a physical action figure, to be honest. That being said, I think NECA did a great job turning it into an action figure. As far as it looking like how it's supposed to look, it definitely does. And they got all the parts right, it seems. Like everything is there to make the 2012 Shredder figure. And with that, yeah, this figure looks great. The paint is great. The sculpt is great. Like all the detail is there. And then the reflective metal parts are really cool and all of that. And then the cloth cape is great. There's just something about it that I don't enjoy. I like looking at it on the shelf and not touching it. But anytime I pick this figure up, it just feels like it's going to break. And maybe that's also because I did break it. Now, granted, I could pop it back in, but it's still broken regardless. So I have an apprehension to breaking more of it. Even though it's an easy fix, still, I'm thinking about that when I'm messing with this figure. And that coupled with the fact that a lot of NECA's figures' joints are super tight, so you kind of have to get in there and work the figure a little bit sometimes to get them to loosen up. And there's just a lot of pressure with this figure, not just because he's got a lot of sharp points that they can, get you. And then there's the articulation. I just did not enjoy moving this figure around. Like I said, he looks fantastic, but like he can't really turn his chest around too much to get like a full range of motion there. It feels like super tight, and I think the way it's designed, it's just not you'd have to go in and like file it down a little bit to be able to make it move a little bit better. But even then, like the knees don't really work that great, and just the arms are really stiff, and the armor kind of encumbers some of the articulation. But I got to the point where I did not want to pose this figure anymore. Now, I will say that like I did appreciate how the gauntlets on his arms could rotate, which kind of helped make up for some of the arduous articulation points that like I just did not enjoy moving around. But then I just felt like I could not get this figure in any cool dynamic pose without risking breaking it or it just being not fun to play with. And that's something that NECA rides the line with. They make adult collectible action figures that can be posed, but generally they side, in my opinion, on looks, which I kind of think is the best option still, because you're getting a cool looking figure or statue, if you want to call it that, but you've just got some articulation options that can, make it look like in a different pose. And so I kind of have to remember that this isn't a Marvel Legends figure, whereas, a lot of the modern ones are a lot of fun, but and some of the turtles tend to be just, they're a lot of fun to still play with, even though they come from NECA. There's just that line that they walk, and Shredder this time just seemed to be a little bit more on the looks side than the action figure posing side. On top of that, the way that they got the cape to attach to the shoulder armor, I don't understand it still. I mean, it's probably more simple than I'm making it out to be, or like, I'm like worried about it. But again, it's another thing about this figure that I'm worried about. If I move him in this direction and that pops out, I don't know if I know how to get it back in. Now, I'm sure there's a tutorials that I can't be the only person that has happened to, or that, has wondered how that's worked and then maybe went in and like showed you like how it is. And again, it could be very super simple, but regardless, it's just, I don't want to have to fix an action figure that breaks because I just moved it the way that I move any action figure. That was another detriment to this figure, in my opinion. But that being said, I do like the accessories. The extra long claws, those are really cool. And I tend to keep them on mine in display because he just looks so over the top anyway that, like, why not just, keep that look going? And then the other hands are fine. Again, like I said, I didn't use them because I'm scared to really touch this thing and move it around or do anything with it. It's nice that they're there. That's cool. And then the burned face is fine, but like, I don't know. The sculpt and everything is there. It's great and it looks cool and the head looks great. But I don't want to risk popping this head off, especially with how difficult of a time I had with the turtles' heads. I have no real need to see Shredder's burned face. Like that, I don't need that. I'm glad it's there for people who need it or want it, but I'm happy with pretty much the way it comes. And then the Krang figure is cool, but like, why are his right tentacles just hanging down? Like, I get that, like, with this pose, you can put him on the edge of things, like on the side of a box or something. And there is something cool about that. I will give them that. But looking at the figure, it looks like you could have put some joints in there. Now, granted, I'm not the biggest fan of articulated things like that, like on especially that small, but you're not going to be moving them around too dynamically. So like, you could have raised those up and then have them drop down if you wanted this look, but raise them up if you want them to be flat. I don't know. I feel like that's a little weird, but at the same time, again, I appreciate the fact that you can get him on the side of something like he's hanging off. That's kind of neat. Other than that, the accessories are pretty lacking. And so I wish I had more positive things to say about this. His design works great with the turtles because that's how they're intended, with the 2012 turtles. Anything else, he looks a little too exaggerated. He just has a hard time working with other lines. And, honestly, he's not really designed to work with any other lines. He's really just designed to work with the 2012 series, and he does. And they work great. So that's not really a fault of the action figure itself. That's more just the design, but still, it's something I like to mention. Overall, I love the way this thing looks. He looks awesome on the shelf, and I think Neca did a great job bringing that figure to life in plastic form for our shelves, but I think that's where he's probably going to just stay for me, is on the shelf. I just did not enjoy my time with this figure or really anything about this figure other than its look. So that's kind of disappointing in my opinion, because I'm a big Shredder fan, like I said. So like I was hoping to have like, another one and another one. But what can you do? Just wanted to put all that out there. So if you're a Shredder collector, then this is just another one for the collection. And I think that if you got the money and you're big into Shredder, this is not a bad Shredder to have on the shelf. If you have shelves dedicated to bad dads and jealous rejected men, then Shredder works on both of those levels. If you collect leaders of evil organizations, he will absolutely fit in there. Or if you only collect figures that are super sharp and dangerous to handle, then you'll want to be careful when you pick up this Shredder figure. All right, well, that's going to do it for me today. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, hit the like button. If you want to see more from me, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments, did you have the same experience with this Shredder? Is that something that you even care about? Like, what's your favorite version of Shredder? I want to know all that. And if you want to hear me talk more about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, be sure to check out my podcast here on YouTube. It's Turtle Soup Show. I believe that's how. I don't think it's Turtle Soup Podcast. One way or the other. Look up Turtle Soup Show Podcast in some form or fashion here on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, and you'll find my buddy Ryan and I have been talking about the Ninja Turtles for well over 10 years. And we're currently in the early 2000s reviewing Volume 4 of the Mirage comics. And so if any of that sounds cool to you, come check us out. Like, subscribe. That's always fun. And until then, else time.